Hello, Uta here of Trans Widow Uta Hagen channel and of utahagengrasswidow.wordpress.com blog and author of In the Curated Woods, True Tales from a Grass Widow, published by iUniverse and now still available. We had apparently a little glitch with their website, but it is available to order, and it gives a lot of data about what happens when your husband says he's a woman and starts claiming that he is entitled to say he's the mother of your children, and he feels entitled to start pretending that he delivered those two sons by natural childbirth. It just goes on and on. So I'm here to tell you really the preliminary data from my survey, which of course Dr. James Cantor, sexologist in Canada, has already said is invalid because I'm finding what I'm looking for. And he said that without knowing anything about who I am and how I'm doing this, or what the questions are on my survey. Please go to the video from a couple of days ago with the 20 questions to ask a trans widow, because now we have some results, some data points from 35 of us, 35 being 10 more than the data point in a brain scan study, which Dr. James Cantor, Canadian sexologist, was a co-author of. And so if I have a growing number of respondents, if N equals more than 25, then maybe my data is just as valid. Personally, I'm looking to get a couple of hundred of us. Please spread the word. So first, this is very exciting for me. I want to say Speedwell. That's not right. No, it looks like Speedwell. It might be in the same family, but it's called Culver's root. And my guy Clace grew this from seed, and then we planted it out, and it started blooming. We thought it was going to be white, but it's pink. You can tell I like this color. And of course, I've got more phlox blooming. I just sighted Great Spangled Fritillary Butterfly number 50 on July 4th. This is very exciting for me because I'm really seeing them every day and several at a time, so that I know I'm not counting the same one over and over again. These are sweet peas, which unlike garden peas that we eat, sweet pea garden flowers are toxic. So that's it's a real wonderful tap-rooted perennial, and it comes in several different colors. Sometimes they're purple and pink and stuff like that, depending on the variety. I have several of them climbing up my garden fence. I want them to make it look like there's no fence. So first, what I'm going to do is read through the response, the very careful and considered responses to the 20 questions from our Juliette. And if you go to the Trans Widow Testimonies playlist, you will see there are at least two parts of Juliette's story. She's a young mother with a toddler whose husband suddenly brought her his laptop computer so that she could read the letter that he wrote to her about how he has to now cross-dress for the rest of his life, and now he's with another guy like him, and he calls himself Mama something. So I just, now the way I'm conducting this is any credible story from a trans widow, I am gathering data from it. Now, these women didn't necessarily answer all 20 questions, which means that various things like financial abuse and coercion in the bedroom are going to be underreported. But because we are officially suppressed. And information from us is, in a very totalitarian way, prevented from coming out in public. I have to gather the information where I can. Now, there are some people that I'm going to follow, some women that I'm going to follow up with, where in my communication with them after they contacted me here at this channel, where if I didn't get every single question answered, then I will gather that information. I made myself this great big chart in a very kindergarten teacher way. I'm not doing a spreadsheet on my computer. I took big paper and drew lines, and I have it all checked off so that I would have room for notes in the bottom. One sad piece of information I found out from Angie Jones of Turf Talk Down Under YouTube channel in episode number 40 is that her mother-in-law, after her father-in-law came out years ago and started full-time cross-dressing, her mother-in-law basically was so alone and isolated that she drank herself to death rather quickly and died of sepsis. So that makes three trans widows that I know of who went way downhill very fast after the narcissistic abuse of a cross-dressing husband. So here are Juliette's answers. Number 1, was it a revelation he made, or did you discover his secret? She says, he told me. So that was a revelation. 2, did he tell you that it's under control and then it actually escalated? No, he declared his new identity and demanded immediate compliance from me. 3, did he select a therapist for you to speak to who said you should have realized you're a lesbian? Kind of. I suggested a couples therapy. He then chose a LGBT++ supportive therapist who affirmed his trans identity. I only attended once and didn't give her the chance to tell me that I'm a lesbian. So I have to think about how I want to answer that, because I'm sure if the therapist, I'm relatively certain that if the therapist thought there was any chance of getting Juliette to stay, the therapist, I think it was a male, would have said that. So I have to think about, how that's going to be recorded. Because the thing is, maybe it's even should be 2 questions, part A, part B, because her husband did choose the therapist, and that's typical. Is instead of going to finding someone who is going to be reasonable with the woman, he chooses someone who is part of the ideology, and then they gaslight you together. Number 4, did he put money in a secret bank account to fund his wardrobe and other purchases? Yes, he spent a lot, upward of this huge amount. I'm not going to reveal what continent it's on. He spent a large amount in about 3 months on clothes, accessories, makeup, hair, body hair removal, and etc. And there's a question mark about whether there might have been some prostitution or something like that he also paid for. But she doesn't know, so I just know that we talked about that. It's just too much money. How do you spend so much money? It goes real fast when it's prostitutes. Did he wear your clothing? She says, not that I know of. He went out and bought his own clothes. 6, did he request sex role play whereby you're to take a male role? He suggested, but I didn't do it. So that is yes, he did request. I didn't stick around to find out more. I left within the month of him so-called coming out. Now, the way I am phrasing the data on this is, did he or his therapist or some mental health practitioner cajole, coerce, or convince you to do sex role play with something like a strap-on, so-called, fake penis. And we're coming out with significant amount of yeses to that, even when on many of our 35 individuals, I actually don't have that data because these women chose not to talk about it. And that's kind of part of the problem. What I would suggest to you, Dr. James Cantor, if you're watching this, is what should have happened to, first of all, justify telling men that they can transition and become the opposite sex. You should have had separate and independent studies of their wives and children to determine what are the ramifications for society of setting up something as brazen as the Blanchard protocols to steer this man into these actually dangerous medicalizations of opposite sex hormones and genital surgeries. So the Blanchard protocols are his rule of you have to have done this for 2 years and get a letter from your employer and be employed, and you have to have been solidly 24/7 cross-dressing. And way back in 1995, Nettie went for this after detransitioning for a time, and then he didn't do anything solidly for 2 years. He didn't tell our children until after the operation. He wasn't cross-dressing in front of them before his surgeries. So these were rules that were sort of made to be broken. Number 7, did a therapist suggest the role play from the previous question? Okay. She says, as I said, I only attended 1 session. 8, did he use social media to defame you? Not that I know of. He has multiple accounts across a number of platforms that I am not aware of. 9, did he report to any mental health practitioner that you abused him? She says, I don't know. Number 10, did he ever attack you physically? Yes, he strangled me when I said he wasn't a woman. He also had pushed her to the floor in a dangerous way while her baby was in the room when the baby was only about 6 months old. So there were 2 incidents. The second one of the choking, she did call the police, so there's a police record. That will help her in the divorce. Did he force unwanted sex on you? No, I left him before things escalated. That was 11. 12. Did you live below the poverty line at any time after the relationship ended? Not below the poverty line, but I had to apply for government support and ask for money from my parents. So I would say, I would maybe rephrase this question, because if you're getting money from other sources who are not the father of the child, it means that if you didn't get that money, you would be living with the child below the poverty line. So I'm thinking of rephrasing that question, and when I figure out exactly how I'm going to rephrase it, like, did you have to ask for governmental help or help from relatives because otherwise you would have been impoverished? This would be a yes. Number 13, did any members of the clergy urge you to violate your religious beliefs? That's a no. There just happened to be some of the 35 of us who went for religious advising, and some rabbis, priests, and ministers are actually coming out as very pro-trans and really being part of the coercion of the women. And if you ask me, that's a violation of whatever kind of promises to God they made when they became a religious figure. 14, did any therapist insist that you must learn to share Mother's Day? No. After I separated, I specifically sought out a gender critical therapist. Now, this is new for her, and she may encounter this. So in a way, she may encounter it later on if they have a Mother's Day where she is, which I think they have something like that. Most countries do. But 15, did any therapist insist you must refer to him as female in therapy with you? No. After I separated, I specifically sought out a gender critical therapist. Now, one thing that's happened to me is that when I was interviewing therapists just to help me with cognitive behavior therapy to deal with my PTSD, which is, things are going pretty well, just to reassure everyone. I have had to reject therapists who said, well, of course you would have to refer to your ex-husband as your ex-wife. And they used very captured language. And I said, well, thank you very much. I'm not going to waste any more of my time and your time. 16, did you lose a set of friends? Yes. 17, does he identify as the mother of your child? Not that I know. However, number 18 is revealing. Is he requesting to be called mama something now from the child? Yes, based on my child's language when he comes back from there. 19, did a therapist blame you for him deciding to do all of this because you didn't try to keep him in the marriage? No. She was not participating in any of that thing. The reason I ask this is that many, many women are gaslit that, and in fact, trans widow number 35 was gaslit by her husband and other people when they said, well, if you had stayed, then he wouldn't have had to go cross-dressing full-time. And so this is this erosion of the woman's psychic integrity, her psychological integrity, and her boundaries in any kind of a normal marriage. 20, did he co-opt your labor experience? She says, not that I know. And depending on what kind of path he takes as the child grows up, she may find out that he's been doing that. I found out kind of years later when I ran into a couple of people that Nettie had been talking to as if I didn't exist, and they both informed me that I can't be the mother of my sons because they heard Nettie talking about going through natural childbirth, to which I wanted to say, you need new glasses. But, you know, some people don't know the tells. They don't have their glasses on, and they don't see the brows, they don't see the strong chin, they don't see the Adam's apple, they don't see the shoulders being bigger than the hips, which is all male proportions as opposed to female proportions. All right, so this is just the preliminary report on 35 of us. One last note is that when I Googled trans widows to see if I could find any more testimonies, I saw a couple of complaining notifications from bloggers whose husbands had died, women who are widows, complaining about this. And I resisted the term trans widow also, but that is the universal one. And, you know, people call a wife whose husband is constantly on the computer widows. People call a wife whose husband is constantly out with his buddies watching American football widows. So this is a term that kind of evolved from a logical place. Now, the term grass widow as a woman who did not live with her still living husband was originally from 1528. So calling someone a modification of widow linguistically has been around since the 1500s. And there is also the thing about the guy thinks that his past life in which he married you, that is dead, and his old name is dead, and all that. So there's all that death reference. I have great respect for widows. My guy Clace is a widower. His wife had died about 10 years ago. So I understand anyone who feels a little bit offended about that. But right now, we're stuck with it. If you have a better idea for something for us to be called that is honoring the experience that we have and the way we've been there, filling the shoes of, in a way, both mother and father in terms of raising our children, then just drop me a note in the comments. Thanks, and keep on sharing, subscribing, liking, and getting out